Hello and welcome to the final video in the series about creating objects in PHP. So, just to walk you through the entire process, we started off by talking about what is a class. Then we defined the interface, so what are the methods and the properties of that object. Then we created the properties, and that was pretty simple, but there's the only tricky little thing is the access modifiers, which may be a new thing to you. Then we started working on creating the methods, and when you start talking about methods, you have to start talking about this and the arrow operator. Then we need to start talking about instantiation and constructors. Constructors was the first method that we created. It's how we initialize the properties of an object. Then we created the TOSTRING, which is used to test our objects. Then we talked about getters and setters. Those are all magic methods, or in plain terms, a magic method in PHP is a method that's it's kind of sort of built into the object, but it's waiting for you to define it. And the last step is creating some other methods. So back in the very beginning when we were talking about the interface, I said we would do a talk and an eat. So we'll create a talk and an eat. All the interesting stuff is the custom methods here. So, right, I can call these whatever I want. I'm just going to make them easy to use. And when you start creating your own methods or functions, I think you should document those. So we'll document these. So let's do talk. Public function talk. So in defining this function, it could, or I didn't comment those functions, bad job me. I could pass it a string, tell it what to say, but I do this. Like I said, back in the very first video, I said I always create a talk function on my objects just to test them. It's usually actually the first thing I do because it takes some work to set up a constructor and a toString, whereas this takes like no work. For this one, I can just say echo, hello there. Right, nothing, right? I don't even have to access properties. I don't have to talk about access modifiers other than that one right there. And how that works, let me put a line break on that. And I'm going to transition that into the first thing that we do. Well, okay, not the first thing. I need to make my object, and then I'll say can talk. Just a call to a function. Now, it would make sense to have this return a string and then put an echo in front of this, or I'm just going to have it echo on its own. Like I said, it's usually the first function or method that I create, and I just do that just to make sure that I'm instantiating my objects correctly. Not very interesting, but that's an example of custom function. Doesn't really serve any purpose. It's just, like I said, it's literally the equivalent of hello world in terms of objects and methods. Now, the other one that's going to be a little more interesting is eat, but let me document this function. So, when you document a function, there's kind of three things that I think you should do. First thing you should do is briefly describe what it does. This is a simple testing function that displays a string. It's kind of nonsense. And I will say no arguments, no return value, and it echoes a string. Hello there. You see what I'm doing? I'm just describing what this function does and how to use it to somebody who looks at this in the future. Now, somebody might be another programmer who's working on this project, or somebody might be me. If you've written enough code, you know what I mean when I say that you'll write a function or a chunk of code, and it makes sense when you're doing it, but then you look at it a week later and you're like, what is this? Especially a weird function like this. I'm glad I said it's a simple testing function, because if I'm sitting here trying to think what I was thinking when I wrote this, probably not going to happen. So, next I'm going to do is that eat function. Public function eat. Alright. So, I've got big plans for this function. I don't know why that's not indented. It makes me nervous, but we'll figure it out. Alright. Eat. So this function, you are going to pass it a integer, and so like if you pass it 1, it means that you eat one food and you're going to get 1 more HP. This could be complicated if I wanted it to be complicated, but I kind of don't really want to. So that means we're going to need a parameter here. I'll just call it an int, implying that it's an integer, and I will say that this HP plus equals whatever the value of that thing was that I passed it. Now, there are problems here. I mean, you could call them problems. At this point, this kind of, like I said, when you start writing these functions, you start realizing you need more properties. So what is this? Is this thing maximum amount of HP? Is this my current amount of HP? I'm thinking there would be a cap on HP and there would be a current HP. Like I said, when you start actually writing these programs, they start to grow in complexity. I brought that up when I talked about defining the interface, because it's good to sit down there, write things on paper, scratch it out, kind of connect the dots, plan things out, but also knowing that once you start getting into the complex problems that you're solving, they do get more complicated. So I'm saying this is just current, and there's no cap on it. It would make a lot of sense to, say, have an if here. Something like if HP is greater than or equal to max HP, don't do anything. But there's no such thing as max HP, so we're just going to do that. Now, I could also do something weird, like, I guess weird. Like also echo something out, like, I just ate. I don't know what I'm doing here. Food. And gained int HP. Now, do I think it makes sense to display a string here? Probably not. It's generally a bad idea to have a string being printed out in a function, which I've done twice, but I'm also just trying to make this easy. I just kind of want to show you proof that it's happening. So let's not do the talk one. Let's say Ken is going to eat 10 food, and then I'm going to echo Ken. I'm getting rid of Sarah because I haven't been using Sarah. So in the beginning, we're going to see Ken's going to start off with what I think, I don't know, a random amount of HP. Ken's going to eat some food. Then we're going to echo, and Ken's going to have more HP. Why am I missing my first two string? I just ate 10 HP. So I wanted to print. Oh, oops. I want to have an echo Ken above, just so you can. No, I meant to copy that, not cut it. I wanted to do that so you can see that it was changing. I mean, you know it's going to change, but all right. So I start off level 5, 15 HP. I eat 10 food. Now my HP is 25. So you can see at this point how our toString helps us to test that our properties are behaving as we expect them to. And you can do whatever you want from here, right? Like, this is the cool part of your function of your program. Whatever these functions do is what makes it do what you want it to do. That function had a few too many do's in it for my liking, but I'm also not too concerned about it. So at this point, you could just make more complex methods, add more methods. I know I call them a function a method all the time, right? And that's not the right way to say it, but I can't help but say the word function because I write function all the time. But remember, the difference between a function and a method is a function that's inside of a class. And that concludes my tutorial on how to get started with objects in PHP. So there's a ton of more complicated things that we didn't get into. The two off the top of my head that I can think of are statics and inheritance. So there's much more to this world than what we've discovered here, but this should get you the tools you need to start playing around with these things and maybe learn a little bit about how they work. And next time you see some object-oriented syntax, maybe you'll have a better understanding of what you're actually looking at. So hopefully you enjoyed the series. Let me know if you did. I could make more videos on things like inheritance. I want to. I just, in the past, when I've made long series like this, pretty much no one watches them. I don't even know if my students watch them, really. So I make them because I think they're cool, and I think that they're a good tool potentially, but they usually go underutilized. So I'm happy to make more if you want, but based on past experience, this is the end of the series. So thank you for watching.